Welcome to Life Beyond Sunday. We're so excited that you're joining with us today. Welcome our host, Kelly Kamara.
I was like, you guys do it then.
TJ does
And they
everything
did.
very
He
intense.
He did it, but he did it well, and now I'm ashamed.
No shame.
It was good. All right.
Shame off you.
Now I need to take that home and practice that.
Yeah, you just go home and watch that intro over and over again,
I'm
and
going
you'll
to
be
repeat
good.
those exact words. And here's our host, Kelly Kamara. Anyways, today we're going to be talking a little bit about leading through adversity, which is something that you guys have done a few times.
No.
And it's not at all, right?
Never
Never.
at all.
But it's tough because a lot of times, like, you are in a position and life happens and you still have to show up for people. And that's not just in the workplace. You're a mom and you're going through a difficult time. You lose somebody. I mean, those kids, they need you, right? You have to show up.
Yep.
And that happens in the workplace too, where you have a personal life. And maybe here it's different because it's a church, but in most corporations, they don't, and I say this loosely, it's not that they don't care, but you still have to produce, right? And so how today we're going to discuss how you guys have continued to show up, and what are some things in either your mindset or in your day or in, or in how you handle the situation that's going to help people see, like, oh, I hadn't thought about that before. So what are either some personal examples or some things that you do where you've been met with adversity, but you still show up? And how do you do that? Like, what's your driver?
Gosh, there's so many.
I think sometimes I'll say this as a leader, right? I think sometimes when we face adversity, let's say it's in the workplace or there's a challenge or there's something going on, I think that can tend to make us second guess ourselves as leaders. Like, am I the cause of the adversity, or somebody's not getting something? Like, because I think that's a lot of it, of the adversity that we face in our families, in our workplace, is just the challenges, the dynamics, the frustrations, the lack of clarity, something like that. And a lot of times when either people in my organization have failed in a certain way, or if there's been challenges in the organization, a lot of times I look introspectively and I'm like, am I a bad leader? Like, did I do something? And it makes sometimes me question, because I tend to think if I'm a good leader, then everything should be operating and functioning well. There shouldn't be any challenges because I'm being a great leader. But the reality is that a leader is needed when there is adversity. Like, a leader is needed. You're in that position because they need you to navigate the difficult moments or the challenges. And so I've had to shift my perspective sometimes on the leadership in the midst of adversity and go, no, this is when I'm needed most, not when things are easy or good or, just kind of happening, but when there is a need to bring clarity, direction, some of those things. So for me, it's been myself shifting my perspective in that moment and going, no, now's the time for me to step up and bring clarity, instead of just kind of shrinking back and going, oh, this is my fault. Or does that make sense?
Yeah, that's good.
I think a lot of times for me is when I've faced personal adversity, I've just had the mentality of I want to show people what they're supposed to do when they're going through something. And like recently, we had a loss, and it was the work the next day, and I was like, man, I'm just going to show up and I'm going to dominate tomorrow. I can't do anything about the pain that I feel and the hurt that I'm experiencing, but I can show up and dominate my day. And I don't have to let that impact every aspect of my life. Just because I'm dealing with something doesn't mean everybody else has to deal with it.
Yeah.
Like, there are still things that I can do, and there are still things that I can accomplish. And I want to be the example. Paul said, follow me as I follow Christ. I want people to follow me. So how am I going to lead through this? And so I don't look at adversity as a bad thing. I think of it as an opportunity to show people how they are to act, do, be, when they are eventually going to go through something.
Do you have that similar mindset of like leading by example in this? And so
100%. 100%. And I think leading by example and continuing to show up and doing all of those things that model that life happens, difficult things happen, and it doesn't have to set us back. I also think I think a lot of people would think, well, you're just stuffing it down or ignoring that. But the reality is I'm being on it. Like, yeah, I had a difficult moment. I had a loss. I'm sad. I'm this, I'm that. But it doesn't have to mean that I'm not still showing up, you know?
How do you balance, like, do you let people around you know? Like, do you let people know, like, hey, I had a loss and I'm like, do you?
A lot of times I do. I'm like, hey, I've faced these things in my life. So if I seem a little bit down, or if I, like just letting people know a little bit that goes, I'm still here, but if I respond differently or,
I don't talk about this very often. I don't know that I've gone super public, but like depression has run rampant in my family. And it's something that there are seasons where I personally fight it. Like, it's like, I feel that, and I call it a spirit of oppression coming on me. Like, I know what it is. I know that heaviness, and it would be so easy. And what most people do is they go, well, I don't feel. And so they let their feelings dictate everything. Yeah. And I act my way into feelings. And so when I start feeling like that, I just show up and I go, man, I'm going to act this way. And there have been so many times that I've just acted my way out of those feelings that have come on me. And I think so many of us, we succumb to them instead of running up and fighting them.
Right.
And I know that, that's just, you're just ignoring. No. I'm fighting. Like, I think about the armor of God. The armor of God has nothing for you to retreat with.
That's good.
So instead of running from what you're facing, I like run right in. Like, okay, I know what I'm feeling right now. I know what I feel like doing is laying in bed for the next 36 hours. And I can give into that. Or I can get up, I can get ready, I can go attack my day and dominate it. And I know by doing that, all of a sudden, all these feelings that I have, they will begin to subside, because I've done it enough now to know that if I run up against it, they will flee. Because the power that lives in me is way greater than the emotions that come on me.
Yeah, you don't neglect the things that you do in healthy seasons, right? And I think when we get in those seasons where it's hard or difficult, the first things that go are the things that actually help us remain in a good mindset, in a good place. And so I think when we get tired or weary or we're facing adversity, it's so easy, you're right, to shrink back or to give up the praying, the Bible reading, the showing up to community or to your workplace and in accomplishing something that actually gives you a success, and it's interesting how the enemy works and kind of deceiving us into neglecting the things that actually bring us health,
And how do you guys decide, was there ever a season where you were like, I can't lead right now and I need to take a step back? And how do you differentiate that between like, no, I can push through? What are the kind of the symptoms and the differences, and have you lived a season like that?
Yeah, I mean, I can speak on that. When we were going through our season with Alexander and all of that hit, I remember texting my oversight and going, I was honest. Like I told him I could see where I was at, and I was like, I'm in trouble. And I didn't know what to do. Like, that's how I felt. And so when I didn't know what to do, I didn't just give in. I actually went to people and I said, man, this is the moment that I need you in my life. And they assessed my life and they made decisions for me when I couldn't make decisions for myself. And I think it's partly why we're such big advocates for community. Like, you've got to have some people in your life that love you but aren't impressed with you and are more concerned with who you are than what you accomplish, because they could see, like, I'm a person that will just keep pushing. It's just my natural tendency. Like, I'll keep grinding, I'll keep going. And they knew that would be the worst thing for me. And so they helped make decisions for me. And honestly, it put a whole bunch of pressure on Shayla, because That was on like a Thursday or Friday that went down. And this is the week after Easter. We just had the highest high, and thousands of people are getting ready to come to church. And they're like, what are we going to do for the weekend? I'm like, I've got notes ready. And Shayla just took my message and preached. But I took a step back for 10 weeks during that time.
But I think there's something about that. I think a lot of people at first, and the reason that you can now continue to show up, in those moments of difficulty, I think is because there was a season where you recognized brokenness or things that were triggering from your past. You allowed there was healthy things that allowed you to move forward. You went through counseling, you maintained community and all of those things. And there was a season, and then you stepped back in, but you stepped back in a healthier place. And now when things happen, when difficulty happens, you know how to deal with that, and you can continue to move forward without being stuck.
Yep.
So I think there is a component to, if you've never gone through counseling, if you're continuing to live in a depressive state and you continue to just kind of shrink back rather than being able to continue to move forward, like going and dealing with those things, but then still being able to show up in your family, in your, church, in your job, is important.
Did you step back with TJ in that season? Mm-mm. And how was that like? How did you handle that, like that season, and lead from there? Like, were you open about like, hey, I am going through a difficult time, and my person is not in here right now with me? And so did you share that? Did you just keep chugging along? Did you just keep showing up?
Honestly, I don't remember.
I mean, we went through counseling together.
Yeah, we did.
And we had a support system around, like those people were checking on Shayla too. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like, hey, we're triaging TJ
and Shayla's.
Well, I think the hardest part about being in leadership when you walk those seasons, like there's this balance of full transparency of I'm walking through stuff is great. And I think, that's important. But then there's also a level of when you are transparent about what you're walking through, there's millions of people that want to give you their advice on how to walk through something or what they've done. And so there's this balance of repeated conversations, right, that kind of keep you stuck in the same conversation. But that's, I think, unique to where we lead from, in the transparency and authenticity that we lead from, that might not be present in most places. But I am just a firm believer that my pain has purpose no matter what season. So I live with a perspective no matter what I'm walking through, that if I have to walk through this, then I'm going to help bring somebody else purpose through this. So I want to walk through it in the most healthy way possible. So whether I'm in a difficult season or not, like I fairly regularly talk to a counselor. Maybe it's quarterly, maybe it's monthly, just to go, hey, how am I doing? What is there anything that I need to deal with? Because I don't want to get tripped up when things. So I do things when there's not adversity. It's kind of like the statement I made in a message not long ago: the more you sweat in peacetime, the less you bleed in wartime. Mm-hmm. So the more effort I put into creating myself as a healthy person, when I walk through adversity, I have the right tools to walk through it without getting stuck.
Yeah.
So I said it in a message too. It's easier to prepare than it is to repair.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So how are you preparing yourself? How are you setting yourself up?
Because there will be adversity.
You're going to face adversity. It's inevitable. That's part of life. But if you're not prepared for adversity is going to kick your butt.
Yeah.
You're going to get stuck.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's funny because you talked about this like repeated conversations that sometimes end up happening, and they bring up like, I had an experience, this was a while ago, where my dad had passed away, and I went to work like 2 days later. I was like, what am I going to do? Like, I have to forget. And everybody copes differently. This was me, right? So I show up, and my workplace, there's like a open space with a ton of desks, and then there's like three. My office is in And so I show up and I see like somebody, one of the people that work with me see me, and he's like, "What are you doing here?" And I was like, I just had to come and get distracted. And he gave me a hug. And of course, like that's the last thing you need. It's like, I was like, so I started crying in the middle of this open space, and I was like, dang it, this is not, so they like saw that vulnerability, but then I was like, this is not why I'm here. Like, this is not why I would need to get distracted. So I turned into this huge open space where everybody wasn't, they were all like staring. And I was like, okay, my dad died. I'm here to get distracted. I don't want to talk about it.
Yes.
And
Sometimes
I was like
that's
very
good.
clear
Be
about,
honest.
I said, I don't want to talk about it, and let's like just try and move forward.
Yes.
I know it's weird. And I went into my office.
Yeah. No, that's great.
Yeah. And I think like just being direct about what you need with the people around you when you're having, 100%. When you're going through these moments. Like sometimes I do need to process.
Yes.
But like,
I'll come to you.
Yeah. You know,
You have a saying that you say all the time. I'm authentic with everyone, but
I'm always myself. I'm always authentically Shayla, but I'm not. Don't have the same level of transparency.
And I think that is the thing that is the key. Like there are people that I am completely transparent with because they have those voices in my life, and everybody else, like you're going to get a portion of that, but I'm not. I don't want to bare my soul to you. I don't think it's healthy for me. Like, and I don't need you carrying that weight. Like, that's not your responsibility. Like, you don't need that emotional baggage. Like, that's not healthy for you, and it's not healthy for me. And I think that there is a tendency to be an and you just end up staying in that place. And I just think that's a terrible thing.
Yeah. And how do you continue to like inspire through that particular season or any season? How do you continue to inspire like hope or productivity or continue in, like if you're leading through? So like you decide, people came into your life and they were like, hey, I think you need to take a step back. You were obviously dealing with a lot, right? You had just lost your son. Your marriage is like, I know you guys have a strong relationship, but you're dealing with like a new reality, right? You were used to having a baby in the home, and now it feels empty.
Now my husband's emotional basket case.
I was. It was the first time ever in my life I was ever emotional.
Do you? And you don't cry. You're not like a
TJ's
crier.
a hard on the outside, but he is an emotional person.
Oh, does he cry a lot?
Since then,
I've cried more in the last 6 years than I probably have in the previous 39.
Oh, good. So it like completely broke you, which is great. Made you sensitive.
gave you compassion.
I look at it and go, that while it was the most difficult thing I've ever experienced, it gave me an empathy and a compassion and a care for people that I never had before.
Yeah. I think you have to walk through those seasons with a little bit of a sense of purpose and go, this sucks. I would never want this to happen to anybody. I don't ever want people to walk through this brokenness or this pain or this difficulty. But the reality is I'm walking through it. So God, like, what do I need to learn in this season, And that's hard to ask yourself when it's hard and difficult and painful. But the last thing I want is to come out of a season and it just be crap that I went through. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how am I learning and growing and figuring out while allowing myself to
I was going to say, because
heal.
you have to, you're going through this process, right? Like,
yes. Well, and that's why your community is important, and having people in your life that you can be fully transparent with, and you can sit on the floor and cry with, and but then you can get up, There's Ecclesiastes says there's a time under heaven for everything, a time to laugh, a time to cry, time to mourn, a time to, But I think a lot of people sometimes overstay their time, right? Mm-hmm. Like we sit in something for way too long. Like, okay, it's time to get up. It's time to move on. Yeah. It's time to,
Was there a conversation that you ended up having with your team that was like, hey guys, like we're counting on you guys to make sure things are like.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. We sat down with all of our staff and came in and said, hey, I mean, we were just on, I was like, I'm broken. Like I'm literally broken, and our oversight, which is why they're there, told me I'm taking a break. Mm-hmm. And so for the next 10 weeks, I'm I'm not available by phone. I'm gone. Like, just act as if I don't exist. And we were, and honestly, our team was like, we got you.
Yeah.
You know, because I think when you're honest and you're transparent about where you're at, the people that are for you, they want to see you win. And I can honestly say the people that were a part of the team here at Coastal, they wanted to see us win.
And it was good for us as leaders because the church grew in that time.
Yeah.
We came back and we're like, they don't need us.
Yeah.
This is amazing.
Which actually shows that you're maybe a good leader.
Right.
Yeah.
Because when you can leave
Your
and
team
be
thrives
and
even without you.
not there, the team, they didn't miss a beat.
Yeah, I think we said this in one episode that if you leave and your team is a mess when you're gone,
There's a problem.
That's a problem in your leadership, and people sometimes think it's like a good thing, right? Like, oh, they don't
I'm
survive
needed.
without me. I'm needed. If that is the concept, then
There's a
you
problem.
are a bad leader,
Yep.
right? There's a problem there.
Yep.
So I think the fact that you guys were able to step away
Yeah.
and things still
Yeah.
thrive.
Yeah.
And I mean, we had a lot of people step in at that time too to preach that weren't from our church. I guess you guys
Yeah.
were able to
Yeah.
reach out to
Yep.
people and
Well, well, that's the whole thing. Like relationships, friends were like, "I've got you. Whatever
Yep.
you need.
Yep.
You know, you need me down there 3 weeks in a row. I'll come 3 weeks. Whatever you need.
yeah.
And you know how many? I mean, to the listeners, how many people do you have in your life that'll be like, "I'll drop everything to come help you for whatever you need."
Yeah.
If you don't have people like that, I would say when you don't have people like that, you're going to end up in trouble.
Yeah.
Like you're not going to deal with adversity well.
Yeah. And those people typically they can call you out. So it's not just people who are there for you,
Yep.
but they're
Correct.
also people
Yes.
who can help. Like hey TJ, we need you to step
Yes.
away, but we're gonna step in too.
Right.
Like
Right.
it was a both and type of
Yes.
thing. Like, hey, we're gonna call this out in you. We see that you need this, but we're also going to show up in every way possible. It's not like they left you high and dry and we're like, oh, best of luck. I think I still remember her message. One of your friends from Bradenton came down to preach like a week later after you.
Yep.
So I thought like, wow, we have a strong, I think it was even a beautiful thing to see as a church. Like, wow, we have a really just like if you were here at that time, it gave just this sense of like, wow, we're just surrounded by, we're cared for. And it just showed for us, it's spiritual leadership, like, oh, they're surrounding themselves with healthy people that can. And I think also, TJ, I know we have overseers and they probably told you to, but I also think it takes a sense of humility to say, and you actually preached a message where you like had that's still one of my favorite messages. They have to go find it somewhere.
Ayla hates that.
Why didn't you like, that was a good message. You were, how much heavier were you in that message?
Quite a bit heavier. Probably,
So you guys have
45 pounds heavier.
TJ preached
Not
a
a pretty
message
sight.
and
Not a
he
pretty
had a red, it was a red shirt.
Yeah,
I still
it was.
remember a red button up
Spanx
shirt.
under it.
And he wore like a white, was that what it was?
It was a white
Spanx.
Spanx. It was like a compression shirt.
And he opens the shirt in the middle of the message and he shows his like dad bod. It's like, and he's like, you guys want to see who I really am? This is me right now. I'm a mess. And it was just like, not a mess, but it was
Yeah.
like
It was the idea that we're all hiding stuff. And we think if we can just compress it and suppress it, that it's not existent.
Yeah.
But the reality,
My
we're just-
problem was you never buttoned up your shirt for the rest of the message.
yeah,
so it was very distracting.
That thing was open for like 20 minutes.
I was like, oh my gosh, can you
And I
please
was
button
like,
that? I'm so
wow.
distracted.
And it was so
And not in
tight.
a
I
good
could
way.
see his belly button.
Not in a good way.
It was great. Now you guys go on
Okay,
YouTube
no,
and find
Yeah,
it.
let's
All right.
never find that
Anyway,
message.
No, it was great.
Way
I still
back in the
remember
day.
that
Way back in
visual.
the day.
That's what you need.
Like
Okay.
2018.
2018, 2019.
Something like that. Yeah,
Right? Yeah.
probably.
2019.
2019.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometime in
Go
2019.
find it. He's wearing
Please
a
don't find
red
it.
Okay.
plaid shirt. Okay.
This podcast
anyways,
is over.
anything-
What a great way to end.
What a great way to ruin.
all right. Any final
I'm
thoughts?
always in adversity with the things that happen with TJ. No.
Any final thoughts or did you like anything else that you're like, man, I just want to leave this to somebody that might be going through a hard time or just about leading, or do you think we covered everything?
I think we.
I think if you're going through a hard time, most people try to go through hard times by themselves.
Yep.
And I would just encourage you, don't do that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Go to somebody that you respect and that you trust and tell them what's going on and tell them, I need help.
Yep.
I know that may seem, in our world where everybody's putting on a facade of like, I've got it all going on. When you get true and you get authentic, that's where freedom comes. It says confess your sins. It's not that you're in sin, but confess your sins that you may be healed. You want to experience healing? Sometimes you got to get those things out and it's got to get public.
Yeah.
Not public for everybody, but public for somebody.
Yeah.
And that's going to bring more healing because all of a sudden you're not carrying that weight by yourself. Now somebody else is shouldering that as well. And, that's why Ecclesiastes, go through freedom. If you attend our church in the fall, go through freedom.
Yep.
It's just an important thing to help you deal with some of those things in your life so you can be
fall or spring. We do it twice a year.
Twice a year. So take advantage of it.
Yep. All right. I want to thank you guys again, and especially for the vulnerability. These are always like really good conversations. So we appreciate you guys, and we will see you guys next week.